Okay, let's do it.
Good morning and welcome. Ooh, we got a microphone issue today. I can tell. Hold on a second. Good morning and welcome. Ooh, it's a little funky, isn't it? I think. Let's try it this way. Good morning. Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. This is Robert Phoenix, and just getting things together here on a Tuesday morning. What's happening out there? It is 9:08 a.m. and see if I can get this back in here. Let's see if we can try this out. Okay, we got both levels now. Thanks for being patient. Don't like the dollar here in the morning, but we can peek it in the red a little bit. How's that? There we go. I think we're going to be dandy. If you're in the chat room, let me know. Give me a heads up on the levels today. Don't want to overmodulate. My life has been a process of overmodulation a lot lately. Speaking of overmodulating, as we get into the red here. Let me just do this, see if this is going to change anything. Quite. Let's go built-in microphone or audio. Okay. There's a lot happening out there. Heck of a lot. We shot down a plane in Syrian airspace. I'm having a hard time, but I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm distracted by the levels. Just a bit. Let's see. Let's try it like... Let's try it like this. That might be a bit better. Okay. Sort of keep the levels, the impedance at a good rate. I think that's the peak. Okay. Let's go. So yesterday was a pretty wild day. First of all, I want to say thank you, Sandra, for alerting me to the fact that the ACX Crystal was a Japanese ship and not a Philippine ship. I've got the best fact checkers on the internet. Too bad they're not all in the same room with me before I do the show. It'd be really helpful. So we had a plane that got shot down, a Syrian fighter, got shot down over Syrian airspace, and this is serious. We are basically one errant missile away from having a green light war with Russia. And that missile, by the way, does not have to be a legit missile, because we know that we live in an environment in a world of false flag theater, so it could be quite possible that some missile that looks like a Syrian missile or some kind of Russian knockoff could send the whole thing on full tilt boogie. Now, this is what the Russians have to say. This is from The Independent. Russia targeted U.S. jets in Syria after America shoots down first Assad regime warplane. This is a big deal. I mean, so what's happened is that the Syrian rebels are getting their asses kicked. They're not good enough. They can't take the fight to the Syrians and Assad and oust him and get him out, so we can have greater Israel and greater Rothschild and all that stuff. All right. Now, remember, based on the Daniel Estulin model, and that model being that there are two competing economic models in the world, there is the Soros-Rockefeller model, which is based on more of a socialist economic model, and then you've got the Rothschild model, which apparently Trump is part of. He's part of the Rothschild model. So if that's the case, then the prevailing piece here would be to flip the non-Rothschild or the non-central banking countries into the World Bank and the IMF. If you look at Obama, and I think it's kind of an interesting piece here with Obama. Now, Obama clearly was into flipping and doing regime change in the United States. I mean, that's really what the last 2.5 years of Obama was about. It was about regime change in the U.S. He was bringing in people from the Muslim Brotherhood to take positions inside of the White House. Of course, we had a ramping up of quote-unquote refugees coming to this country, and then we had the radicalized and weaponized division of the races, which was really unfortunate during the Obama administration. And yet, I don't think he was all that interested in doing regime change in North Korea or Iran or Syria. I mean, I think he begrudgingly got into the Syrian thing and probably couldn't get out of it at that point. And then he had his generals essentially start to, and I believe this was Michael Flynn, start to disagree in terms of sort of the sharing of intelligence and all the stuff that went down in Syria. So I don't think Obama really fought for that, to be honest with you. I don't think he was really, and I don't think Obama really liked Netanyahu. And I don't think he had I think he was forced to participate and play ball with Israel, but I don't think Obama had any fond feelings for Israel. I mean, I think he went to the wall before he was president. Everybody went to the wall before they were president, except for Donald. And Donald went when he was president, so he had to be first at something. But that was one of the things that Obama, I think, actually had going for him. Domestically, he was a pariah internationally. I think that he basically left these countries alone for the most part. He certainly left Iran alone. Now, of course, Iran is in the crosshairs, Qatar's in the crosshairs, and we shot our first Syrian jet down. Let's read this. This is from The Independent. Russia has said it will treat U.S. warplanes operating in parts of Syria, where its air forces are also present, as targets amid a diplomatic row caused by the downing of a Syrian jet. Now, remember, Russia has very strong economic ties with Syria. It has to do with oil and gas. And by the way, I believe it was China who was buying gas and oil from Russia and Iran. And this is recently, they paid in the yuan. And normally, the dollar is the petrodollar, right? If you want to buy oil, this is what Nixon did. He attached the dollar to the oil transactions in the Middle East. He made it the basically fiat currency of the oil exchange. Well, that just changed a couple days ago because China used the yuan instead of the dollar, and which they have plenty of, by the way. They have plenty of those dollars. So this might also signal a sea change as well. I mean, this is not just a war about borders. This is not just a war about principalities. This is a war about currencies, and it's a war about resources. So let's keep going here. The country's defense ministry said it would track U.S.-led coalition aircraft with missile systems and military aircraft, but stopped short of saying it would shoot them down. A hotline set up between Russia and the U.S. to prevent mid-air collisions will also be suspended. So apparently they were talking like, hey, we got a plane here. Hey, we got a plane here. Watch out. We may crash into each other. That's going to be suspended. All kinds of airborne vehicles, including aircraft and UAVs of the international coalition detected to the west of the Euphrates River, will be tracked by the Russian SAM systems as air targets. So if they come across west of the Euphrates, look out. They will be basically play pigeons. The warning comes after a US F-18 Super Hornet shot down a Syrian Army Su-22 jet on Sunday in the countryside southwest of Raqqa, the first such downing of a Syrian jet by the U.S. since the start of the country's civil war in 2011. This thing's been going on for 6 years now. Washington said the jet had dropped bombs near U.S.-backed forces, but Damascus said the plane was down while flying a mission against ISIS militants. Russia's defense ministry said the suspension of its communication line with the Americans would begin immediately. The U.S. did not use its hotline with Russia ahead of the downing of the Syrian government warplane, said the ministry, which accused the U.S. of a deliberate failure to make good on its commitments under the deconfliction deal. The shooting down of a Syrian Air Force jet in Syria's airspace is a cynical violation of Syria's sovereignty. It is. I mean, what are we doing there? I mean, that's a rhetorical question. I think I know what we're doing there. We're doing everything in our power to get Assad out, and then everything in our power to somehow provoke Iran into a war, and everything in our power to somehow provoke Russia into a war and just flip everything, right? And this is what's going on, and it's complete and utter, total madness. It's madness. Now, one of Trump's greatest supporters, Ann Coulter, has come out and said that if he goes to war, he'll lose everything. And he's really close. Trump is very close to completely alienating, I would say, the outer rim of his base. He'll always have his core loyal supporters. I mean, that's the way that leaders, play the game. They have their core, and that core for Trump is probably going to be around, 35%, maybe 35% of the population, 30% of the population. That core will be indissoluble, but the other 70% of the population, I think, could be very anxious. And out of that 70%, I'd say probably about another 25, even to 30% were kind of fringe or outer rim supporters of Trump. And, if we do have these elections, the midterms coming up in 2 years, and there's a really good chance that if we continue to go down this path, if we continue to go down the Greater Israel and the Goldman Sachs path, I don't think the Republicans are going to fare well at all, because Trump is moving further and further away from his planks and platform that he brought in. But this is what politicians do anyway. None of us should be surprised. This is what happens. But it has happened so quickly and so blatantly that it's almost shocking to some degree. Now, what's not shocking around all of this is who is behind the Syrian rebels and who gives them money, who gives them aid. Well, here's an interesting little story from the Wall Street Journal, and this is just 2 days ago. But we've all known this. But now it's okay, here we go. Australia has just suspended Syria airstrikes over Russia-U.S. tension. So Australia's pulling back. Do you know Australia's there, hanging out, playing the war game? Well, they decided that they don't want to get involved. Smart. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. And again, for people that are kind of dialed in and tuned in, we've been talking about this for the last 2 years. Excuse me. Ever since ISIS, popped onto the scene. Israel gives secret aid to Syrian rebels. This is by Rory Jones in Tel Aviv, and Noam Radan in Beirut, and Suha Ma'aye in Amman, Jordan. So it's a piece that's put together by a couple different people. And unfortunately, you have to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal to get the full piece. So I'll be reading kind of I will be reading the Reader's Digest version from Zero Hedge. But that's the headline from the Wall Street Journal, that Israel gives secret aid to Syrian rebels. So on Zero Hedge, of course, it's one of the Tylers, this is what they're saying about the piece. It says, this is a quote, "The Israeli army is in regular communication with rebel groups, and its assistance includes undisclosed payments to commanders that help pay salaries of fighters and buy ammunition and weapons." According to interviews with about half a dozen Syrian fighters, Israel has established a military unit that oversees the support in Syria, a country that it has been in a state of war with for decades, and set a specific budget for the aid, said one person familiar with the Israeli operation. Where do you think the Israelis are getting the money from that? For that, they're getting the money from the United States, with all the big fat dollars we send over there every single year. So in essence, it's not really Israel that's funding the rebels. In all actuality, it's really us. So we're funding the Syrian rebels, and of course, we're funding them from our side as well, not just from the Israeli side. This news comes as a major surprise because while it was well known that Israel's provided medical help for Syrian civilians, really, medical help for Syrian civilians? Can you say organ harvesting? And fighters inside its own borders in the past, with the IDF retaliating to occasional stray rockets in the western border region with reprisals, it was previously thought that the Israeli authorities largely stayed out of the complicated 6-year-old conflict next door. Wrong. That now appears to have been dead wrong. Israel stood by our side in a heroic way, said Moatzim al-Golani, spokesman for the rebel group Fursan al-Julan, or Knights of the Golan. They want the Golan Heights. They want that gas. They want that oil, the Golan Heights. We wouldn't have survived without Israel's assistance. Al-Julan is the main rebel group coordinating with Israel, according to fighters. They told the WSJ that Israel's support began as early as 2013. So we were calling this out, about 2.5 years ago? That puts it around 2014. Under former Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon, with the goal of creating a buffer zone free of radical militants, such as ISIS and Iranian allied forces along Israel's border. A special Israeli army unit was created to oversee the costly aid operation, the WSJ reported, which gives Fursan al-Julan, the Knights of the Golan, an estimated $5,000 a month. So the group of around 400 fighters receives no direct support from Western rebel backers and is not affiliated with the Free Syrian Army, the official rebel umbrella of the organization. Oh my God, things are just so bizarre. There's the official group and the unofficial group. Who has the patents and the trademarks? Who has the trademarks? Maybe Trump should get the trademarks on these things. The journal also reports that Israel may be funding up to 4 other rebel groups which have Western backing. The groups use the cash to pay fighters and buy ammunition. Who do they buy the ammunition from? Question mark. In total, there are roughly 800 rebel fighters across more than a dozen villages in this area, where thousands of civilians live. Fighters said many of the rebels and civilians in this area rely on some level of support from Israel, they added. Most people want to cooperate with Israel, said a fighter with rebel group WWIII al-Rahman, also fighting on the Golan. So there's another rebel group there. The alliance reportedly began after wounded Fursan al-Julan fighters made their way to the border and begged Israeli soldiers for medical assistance. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office did not respond to the journal's request for comment, the Israeli Defense Forces, aka the IDF, said in a statement that it is committed to securing the borders of Israel, preventing the establishment of terror cells and hostile forces. In addition to providing humanitarian aid to the Syrians living in the area, Israel and Syria have technically been in a state of warfare for decades. Syria controls 1/3 of the Golan Heights border. Israel occupies the rest. Well, the third that Syria controls is the petroleum-rich third. So here's another subhead. Israel's been fighting Syrian rebels with cash and supplies in a secret engagement to carve out a friendly buffer zone. There's a whole chronology here, starting from 2011. through 2017. If you want to go to zerohedge.com, you'll be able to find this. So we're starting to see the guts, the intestines of the war, the conflict in the Middle East. And people just need to wake up. I mean, this is really kind of the most important thing that we can participate in, is the further awakening process. And I suppose we're living in a time where it's so polarized, and that's part of our strategy, by the way. Because if we're living in a polarized world, if we're really separated, and if we're really part of this divide and conquer strategy, there's no sensible way to exchange information with people. That's the other side of it all, right? I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of interesting to see these forces get played out because they have been created and mutated to the extreme. And this is what's happened. It's been distilled to the extreme. So it's fascinating to sit back and watch the distillation in extremis. But on the other hand, if there was not such a deep divide, we might be able to actually exchange information. And if we can exchange information, then we're more informed. And it's information like this that's really important. It's really, really important because we have to be able to see kind of what's going on behind the veil. It helps us in terms of understanding the global picture. And the more that we can understand the global picture, to some extent, the more free we are in many ways. Because now we're not beholden to some kind of overarching ideology that really threatens the country, the world, and generations to come. Now, would they go to World War III on something like this? Because to get to World War III, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. I mean, we saw what happened with World War I and World War II. I mean, these are major wars. And they basically redrew the geography, and they redrew the connections to any kind of statehood. It was the sovereignty got completely obliterated. I mean, there was a lot that went on in World War I and World War II, especially in the aftermath of both wars. So these are planetary changing conflicts. And I suppose the real answer to that question is if they would go to World War III is how close are we to completely tapping out with the current economic system? I think that's really the arbiter. If they feel that they have bled the host for all it's worth, then World War III will happen. If they can't extract anything else from the marketplace, then you can rest assured that World War III is coming. Because at that point, they can't make obscene profits. The obscene profit will be made through war at the expense of people, and then on the other side of that, there'll be whatever it will be. But I think that's the only way we get to World War III in a kind of an immediate way. Now, we've got the Great American Eclipse coming up, and there's a lot that can take place during that cycle, including war, including the removal of Trump. And don't be surprised as we move through the summer if there isn't more information, and whether it's real or unreal, whether it's fake news or whatever, that they can somehow aggregate and put the heat on Trump. And we're not that far away. We're just, we're the 20th, so it's going to be the 21st of August, so we've got the 21st of July and the 21st of August. We're basically 2 months away from the Great American Eclipse. How about that? Well, there's a lot more going on than just what's happening with our friends in the Middle East and what's happening in Syria. Otto Warmbier, who was in North Korea and apparently was released perhaps due to the fact that Dennis Rodman showed up, which was kind of wild and bizarre. He was released, and he was released in a coma. He passed away, and that was yesterday. So basically, thank you, North Korea, for at the very least allowing him to pass away in front of his parents. I don't know. It's a terrible thought, to be honest with you. And I'm not even sure. I don't know WWII's story, but apparently they probably thought he was a spy, and he might have been. He might have been a spy. Speaking of spying, there's spying that takes place in hidden places, and then there's spying that takes place right out in the open. Spying that's connected to data, information, and biometrics. We've talked about this before. Biometrics are coming to airports across the country, across the world. They will be the norm. It will start with facial recognition scanning. It will start with iris scanning. It's already started with fingerprints. I think you get your fingerprints taken when you leave the country now. But it's coming. This is from Activist Post yesterday. U.S. Customs and Border Protection reveals next level of biometric ID at airports. Here it comes. Over the last month, some very stark writing has appeared on the wall regarding the advancement of mandatory biometric IDs being imposed on U.S. air travelers. On May 19th, this is by Nicholas West, I reported a new program initiated by Delta Airlines and Minneapolis-St. Paul airports to have automated baggage kiosks for priority customers that will first scan a traveler's passport, then their face, in order to match identity to checked luggage. It was promoted as a pilot program that Delta launched to seek customer feedback in the hope that it could be rolled out more widely in the future. The announcement was followed by JetBlue, who stated they will test facial and fingerprint recognition technology at 2 U.S. passports, replacing boarding passes, building on industry efforts to increase security and ease passage through airports. It's always right. That's it, right there in a nutshell. We're going to make you safe, and it's going to be easier. Safety and ease. Safety and ease. These announcements in and of themselves are enough to heighten concern about additional data collection and databasing that any form of biometric ID entails, but the JetBlue announcement contained an ominous new level of integration between public and private entities. JetBlue is working with U.S. Customs and Border Protection and CETA, an information technology provider for airlines. This is the first integration of biometric authorization by CBP with an airline and may prove to be a solution. It'll be quick and easy to roll out across U.S. airports, Jim Peters, CETA's chief technology officer, said in the statement. An article published just days ago by FedScoop further confirms that the independent media has been warning for years, namely that enhanced security measures, which many believe would be used only against specific groups of supposedly scary people, is set to trickle down to any and all of the traveling public. Even the title of the FedScoop article is a vindication of those conspiracy theorists who had the temerity to suggest a much wider plan for incremental rollouts when these measures were first hinted at. In the article, CBP will implement long-term mandated biometric exit at airports, official says. We discovered the length of the plan, the hurdles that needed to be overcome, and why we most likely are witnessing intensified media coverage at the moment. So the U.S. Customs and Border Protection is finally addressing the 15-year-old plus legislative mandate to check identity of foreign visitors using biometrics. Now, of course, because of what's been happening in places like England, and of course there are, yellow flags all over the false flags, all over the events in England. Although a burning building is not a false flag. This is true. Those kinds of events are events that trickle down through the public's awareness, and the public says, please, please, let us have more security. Protect us. by any means necessary. Oh yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll make it easy. We'll make it easy too. Just look into the camera. In fact, you don't even have to look into the camera. They don't have to. They can grab your retinal scan from probably about 50 feet away. It's that sophisticated. Yesterday I talked about Bitcoin. Let's change the topic a little bit here. Talked about the Chuck Grassley bill that basically wants to. Can you see what's happening now? The measures of control are really starting to click in and kick in here. We have the Grassley bill, which forces people to register their Bitcoin, register their cash. Like, you have to report how much cash you have, and if you don't report the cash, you're screwed. You're going to do jail time. So that's coming down, right? It hasn't passed yet. So if you believe in the system, you should probably get on the horn and talk to your representative and say, this is really not cool, and I'm not down with it. Until further notice, we're still in this system. So unless you're in the non-consent form, and you've done everything in your power to remove yourself from the system, and more power to you and hats off for that, then I would suggest that you basically tell these people to take a hike. Nicely, of course. And then we have, of course, the biometrics, which are encroaching and at some point will be ubiquitous. All of a sudden one day you'll walk up to your ATM and it won't be a card anymore, it'll be your eyeball. And then the next step after the eyeball, everybody knows, is the chip. Anyway, here we go. Here's another little post here. This is actually a very positive one. I'm going to leave you with some positivity today. This is signed into law. Nevada becomes free trade zone for Bitcoin and other blockchains. How about that? This is by Vin Armani from Activist Post. This could make Nevada a hub for blockchain startups, and it certainly offers augurast opportunities. In this video, Vin Armani examines a brand new law in his home state of Nevada that creates a free trade zone for cryptocurrencies and other blockchain applications, exempting them from regulations. The law prohibits taxing or regulating blockchain businesses. Check out the details below. So if you want to, and if you're interested in Bitcoin and the cryptos, check out Vin Armani. That's ARMANI. And you can find that over on YouTube, and you'll be able to watch his video about the new law in Nevada, which gives the blockchains the freedom to operate within the state boundaries of Nevada. So we're about 30 minutes into the show. In fact, we're 33 minutes into the show, which is roughly 15 minutes of flame, and we've covered quite a bit here today. We've covered what's happening in Syria. We've covered what's happening with the funding of a number of groups by our friend in the Middle East. And we've covered the encroaching biometric net that's ready and waiting to ensnare us all. But I never want to leave you with too much doom and gloom, because guess what? There are some positive things that are out there, positive things in the world, and they're in your own life. You can't be the arbiter of your own experience. As we sort through the detritus of the end of the Kali Yuga, because that's really where we are. We're at the end of the Kali Yuga. I mean, think about this really for a moment. We are here at the end of time. And we all thought that 2012 was the end of time. In some ways it was. There are a lot of people that think that 2012 happened and we're living now in the post-2012 reality. A lot of people want me to have Carl Kallman on the show. I think I'm going to get Carl on. I've had him on a couple times. I was one of the first people that interviewed Carl Johan Kallman. You can go onto my website and you'll be able to find that interview. I really like him. He's an interesting character. And he has managed to carve out a really substantial kind of place for himself in the post-2012 environment. I mean, if you look at the players, that were kind of important in the run-up to 2012. You would have to say that Arguelles clearly was one of them. John Major Jenkins was another. Calamon, and I would probably also maybe throw Daniel Pinchbeck in there. I think those were probably the sort of the four kind of biggest players. And if you look at what's happened, Jose Arguelles passed away. He's no longer here. John Major Jenkins is an afterthought at this point, and he had a really good run. I mean, he was published, and there was a lot going on for John Major Jenkins pre-2012. Post-2012, he's kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not paying attention. Maybe he's really doing something, but if he's not like showing up in sort of, he's not showing up the way he was pre-2012. And then Pinchbeck has gone off and started his own Evolver community, and the 2012 was kind of a blip on his radar and his map. But I think Calamon has done really well at, I wouldn't say reinventing himself, but staying relevant. So I'm going to try to get him on the show, and let's see if we can find out what he's up to and talk more about his theories of time and cycles and wave, which I think is really interesting. So you're the arbiter of your own experience here at the end of time. And that means you have the opportunity to choose, and choosing is important, because when you don't choose, things get chosen for you, and you guess what? You don't feel as though you have any sort of power in the process, and as a result, and nobody really wants that. You have the choice to give your consent to certain things as well, whether it is silent or audible consent. So as the arbiter of your own experience, as someone who chooses to consent or not, in this day, choose well, choose wisely, and choose life. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to save what is possible. I'll be back 24 hours from now. See you later.
Okay, let's do it.